Have you ever looked at a colleague's desk, and I mean really looked? It's just stacked high with notes, there are cables everywhere,
Yeah.
half a dozen water bottles, and you just think, how does anything possibly get done here?
Oh, absolutely. We're so conditioned to see that as failure.
Right. We're taught that clutter means a cluttered mind, and that, organization is this visible sign of success.
It's the standard image, isn't it? The super productive CEO in an almost empty, minimalist office. Everything's in its place. It suggests their mind is just as clean and systematic.
Exactly. But what if that whole idea is just wrong? At least for a certain group of really high achievers.
Yeah.
What if for people who are tackling these massive intellectual challenges, letting the physical space get messy isn't a failure, but actually an optimized strategy?
A kind of selective chaos.
Yes. High intelligence manifesting as selective chaos.
And that is exactly where we're going today. We're going to dive deep, move past the surface judgments, and get into the actual cognitive science behind it.
And for this deep dive, we're pulling from a really compelling source called The Intelligence of Selective Chaos.
The big question that the source is asking is basically this: why messy people are often more productive? The science behind what it calls selective organization.
So for you listening, the mission is pretty simple. We want to help you understand the difference between, genuine unproductive disorganization
Which is a real thing?
and this highly optimized strategy, a kind of triage system for where you spend your limited mental energy. You're about to understand why some brilliant people might actually need a messy desk to do their best work.
Okay, so let's unpack that.
We have to start with the paradox, right?
Right.
You walk into that office we just described, physically it looks like a disaster zone.
Right, a junk drawer just exploded on the desk.
But the person sitting there is the one writing the most complex code or drafting these incredibly detailed policy papers. They're pulling together all this divergent research into, one coherent solution.
And that's the visual conflict. It's jarring because our brains are wired to link disorder with inefficiency. We see the mess, and we just expect the work to be messy too. Or late.
But it's not. The paradox is that the output is often flawless. It's highly structured. It's deep. So, okay, this is where it gets really interesting for me. How do the sources explain this? How does that physical mess actually help instead of hurt?
It all comes down to a central idea the sources call selective organization. And this is so crucial to get because it is not an excuse for just being lazy.
Okay.
It's defined as a deliberate cognitive triage. The mind, especially a mind that's dealing with a lot of complexity, knows it has a finite amount of cognitive bandwidth each day.
So it's like a mental budget for your brain power.
That's a perfect analogy. The high IQ mind is constantly running a cost-benefit analysis, maybe not consciously, but it's happening. And it figures out that the effort needed to keep a desk perfectly clean, sorting every paper, wiping the dust off, putting every pen back in its cup, that's a constant low-grade tax on its attention.
So the problem isn't the mess itself. It's the cost of preventing the mess.
Exactly. It's the cumulative mental cost of all those little micro-interruptions. Every time you have to stop and decide, where does this receipt go, or which folder for this note, you spend a tiny slice of your brain's energy.
And if your main job is deep, focused work, those tiny decisions add up. They become a huge drain.
A massive drain on the resources you need for the actual higher order thinking. So the mind makes a choice. It says, okay, I'm going to ignore this little layer of external mess because the mental price for keeping it clean is just too high.
It's not worth the payoff.
Precisely. They're not being sloppy. They're optimizing where their resources go. It's an energy shift.
But where's the line? I mean, surely there's a point where the mess just becomes an actual distraction. If you can't find your keys or that report you need, that's just counterproductive.
And that's the key distinction the sources make. Selective organization is only a good strategy when the external chaos does not get in the way of the internal systems.
Oh.
If you can't find the report, that's just sloppiness. But if you know that the report you need is in that specific stack of papers on the left corner of your desk, even if that stack looks messy to someone else, that's selective organization. The organization has just moved.
So where does all that saved mental energy go? Can we actually pinpoint what gets better?
We can, yeah. It gets redirected almost entirely into structural and conceptual organization. So the person with the messy desk might have this incredibly elegant, structured algorithm for how they work, or their digital files are just meticulously organized and tagged.
Okay, so the chaos is external, but the organization is internal, or in their systems.
Precisely. They might be juggling 10 complex project requirements in their head, but they have a flawless internal matrix for prioritizing them. That's where the tidiness is.
So if they're a software developer, their desk is a mess, but their code is pristine, perfectly commented, easy to follow.
That's the perfect example. They are prioritizing the complexity of the conceptual structure, the code they're building, the argument they're writing, over the aesthetic structure of their physical space.
It's really a profound shift in how we think about productivity. We're so used to judging the container, not the contents.
We see the messy desktop and just assume a messy mind, when in fact, that mind has deliberately allowed the mess so it can keep its really complex internal operating system running perfectly.
You know, it also makes me think that the mess itself could be kind of filing system.
It often is. It's a functional index.
Yeah.
Those piles aren't random. The person knows that the stack of books by the chair is the active research pile. The stack on the corner is the pending review pile.
So the visual cue of the physical thing keeps the task alive in their brain.
Yes, in their peripheral awareness. And it avoids the whole out of sight, out of mind problem. If you file something away perfectly, you might forget it exists. The selective chaos keeps it in your working memory.
Which is incredibly efficient when you think about it.
It is. You avoid the cognitive cost of retrieval because the information is already right there.
Okay, so speaking as how the mind maintains that internal order, let's shift a bit. Let's move from the physical space to an internal tool that the sources say often goes hand in hand with this kind of deep thinking.
Yes. The second piece of the puzzle. What the rest of us might call talking to yourself.
We've all done it, right? Maybe under our breath or a little louder if no one's around.
Hmm.
You're fighting with a really tough problem, maybe debugging some code or just trying to write the first sentence of a big report, and you start muttering.
And we tend to think of it as just a weird quirk or a sign you're distracted.
But the sources say no. They say this verbal reasoning, whether it's internal or out loud, is actually a powerful functional tool for creating order out of complex, abstract thoughts.
It's the counterbalance to the messy desk. If you're going to skip the physical tidying, you need a really robust system for the conceptual tidying. Talking to yourself is one of those systems.
So how does that work exactly?
Yeah.
How is talking an organizational tool?
Well, think about it. When a thought is just silent in your head, it can be sort of recursive and nonlinear. It can jump around. You can skip logical steps without even realizing it.
Like a swirling cloud of concepts.
A swirling cloud is a great way to put it. But the moment you verbalize the problem, you force it to go through the filter of spoken language. And language itself demands a linear structure. It forces you to synthesize. You have to turn that cloud into a single file line.
So you're basically using the sound of your own voice to check your work.
Exactly. You're externalizing a part of your working memory's load. Let's say you have a 5-step logic problem. If you just hold all 5 steps silently in your mind, it's pretty easy to lose track of step 3, or maybe mix up steps 2 and 4.
But if you say it out loud, okay, step 1 is define the scope. Step 2, establish constraints. Now, for step 3, I have to check constraint B against scope A.
The very act of hearing it confirms the logic and the sequence. It's an audio-assisted filing system for your ideas. It validates the connections. And if you say a logical leap out loud and it sounds wrong or awkward, your brain immediately flags it as a problem.
So that person muttering at their desk isn't distracted at all. They're actively running a diagnostic on their own thinking. We really need to correct this idea that it's just weirdness. It's highly functional.
It's incredibly functional. And the sources also mention it serves an emotional purpose. Externalizing a huge, complex problem can actually reduce the stress of it. You're kind of taking it out of the tight space of your own head and putting it out in the world, which can make it feel more manageable.
And this connects so perfectly back to the messy desk. The mind ignores the physical world to save energy, then it uses that saved energy to manage these incredibly complex internal concepts.
That's the beautiful loop. They use tools like verbal reasoning because the problems they're solving are inherently more chaotic than any stack of papers could ever be. So they trade physical neatness for conceptual rigor.
The organization didn't vanish. It just moved from the desk surface to the system level, and it's maintained by these active cognitive tools like self-talk.
It just completely reframes how we should think about efficiency.
Okay, so this brings us to the synthesis. The big takeaway for you, the listener. If you see these patterns in yourself or maybe in a colleague, what are the 2 core things to understand?
The first, I think, is that selective allocation of energy. We have to stop using a visual yardstick to measure someone's internal efficiency. Real efficiency is about minimizing the chaos that actually hurts your main mission.
Right, and maximizing focus on the high-value stuff. The energy you save by not alphabetizing your bookshelf is directly fueling the complexity of your actual work.
And the second big takeaway is about validating those internal systems. If your output is strong, your systems are working no matter how they look from the outside. That habit of talking things through out loud isn't weird. It's a powerful tool for sequencing abstract thought.
The sources really challenge this old industrial age idea that productivity has to look a certain way, that it has to be uniform and visible.
Yeah, true productivity and intelligence are measured by the quality of the output, by the invisible systems people create, not by how neat their workspace is. We just need to question our assumptions about what focus and productivity are supposed to look like.
Which brings us to our final thought, a provocative idea for you to chew on.
So we've focused on the messy desk and talking to yourself. But this principle, this idea of optimized resource allocation, could apply to so much more. Think about your own life. If focusing energy selectively leads to higher performance, what other habits that we might call bad or inefficient, like, say, ignoring low-priority emails for a few days, or wearing the same simple outfits every week, or even having a very inconsistent sleep schedule because you work when you're in the zone?
What if those aren't signs of failure?
Exactly. What if they are actually signs that your cognitive resources are being ruthlessly channeled toward your deepest, most important work by consciously neglecting almost everything else?
So, take a look at your own selective chaos. It might not be disorganization at all. It might just be optimization in disguise.
Thank you for diving deep with us today.
We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.